And welcome back to another episode of the GSMC Basketball Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, and today, once again, we are going to be talking about, hold on, let me just fix the camera for a second, apologies. We're going to be doing three segments yet again. We're going to talk about Ben Simmons finally making his long-awaited return after missing several games due to having back problems. We're also going to discuss Darvin Ham being on the hot seat yet again for the Lakers. I know you guys are probably sick of all the Lakers talk that I've been doing, but it's like a lot of this is important and a lot of it is happening, so it's like I can't really help it. And along with obviously a recap of some of the most important games that happened last night, there's also a fourth segment of the show, so stick around and figure out exactly what that is. But before I begin with the show, yet again, I always ask you guys to please remember to tip and to donate. If you enjoyed this episode, follow us and subscribe to the show. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on any app that carries a podcast. Remember, tip and donate. Use the link that's displayed just below the kicker. It's also going to be in the link in the description. That is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip, really makes the show much more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. So once again, the link is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. As always, it will be in the description and on the bottom of the ticker. And without further ado, let us begin with our first segment talking about Ben Simmons and his long-awaited return to the Brooklyn Nets. As a relative that's like from New Jersey, I always tend to watch a lot of Knick basketball games. I watch a lot of Knick games. I watch a lot of Nets games, watch Giants games, Jets games, because they're all around in the local area. So it's like it's like I'm a New Yorker in terms of like with sports when there isn't a team in New Jersey. The Nets used to be the team in New Jersey, but then they moved after Jay-Z decided to do his thing and bring it to Brooklyn. But regardless, so like I decided I root for them, even though and I occasionally root for the Knicks, even though, they tend to, at least my Nets right now, they're not doing so well. The Knicks are doing pretty well this season. I mean, I wish it was the Nets that were doing better than them, but, we can only get so much in New York. I guess you could, in every sport that goes around, there's New York doesn't tend to be the one that gets talked about the most. It's tough out here. It's tough out here being one of those fans. But after missing several games due to back injuries, Ben Simmons finally made his return to the court. It was a great game for Brooklyn all around as well, going up against Utah, winning 147-114 in an easy blowout, easy win for them. Everyone on that roster was getting buckets. Bridges ended up with 33 points. Cam Thomas ended with 25. Walker ended with 19. Cam Johnson ended with 17. And Ben Simmons didn't even miss a shot. Or, in his case, a layup/dunk because, he doesn't take shots. With 10 points and 11 assists and almost getting a triple-double, having 8 rebounds on top of that. Obviously, first game back with Ben Simmons, that's a really good game. And with any player, honestly, not just for someone with Ben Simmons' reputation for not being that strong of a scorer, but in terms of the points category, it was a really strong game back all around for Ben Simmons. I usually when players they get injured, it's not really expected for them to do much until they get their groove back in. But Ben Simmons hit the ground running this time. It was obviously a great first game back. The Jazz they have a 500 record, and they now hold a play-in spot. They aren't that great, but they aren't a terrible team. Brooklyn tonight just shot the ball much better than anyone expected, and much better than what I expected from them, honestly, with Ben Simmons coming back. He made an immediate impact, and it was crazy. And a lot of players, like I said before, when a lot of players come back for injury, unless you're I don't know, Kevin Durant or something like that, they tend to take a minute to settle in, and then they start getting their groove back. But he hit the ground running with this one. So he's only played 6 games as of right now in the regular season, and the Nets are 19-27, which is still good enough to just barely be below the play-in standings in the East, which just shows just how different, like, the dynamic of both sides are. Like, for like the East, it is relatively close, but it's mainly because the top two teams are so dominant. The West, it's relatively close because it's mainly because, like, all the teams are just as good as each other. Like, all the teams could beat each other, but on the eastern side, it's like you have the 1 seed and the 2 seed having way more wins than the 3rd seed, the 4th, 5th, and so on and so forth. Like, way more wins. It's incredible, like, how the difference between the 2 and the 3, 4, 5, and etc. in the Eastern conferences. The numbers, but back to, like, what I was talking about, like the Nets, like, as a Nets fan, they haven't really been meeting the expectations. Like, they have a mid offense and a mid defense. I believe they're ranked 17th in both last time I checked. I don't know if this game would change that, but last time I checked, they were ranked 17th in both offense and defense. So, meaning that both sides of their game is a wild card. So you don't know what kind of night you're going to get from them. You don't know if you're going to get a night that's strong defensively, or if you're going to get a bad defensive night, or like the vice versa with offense. Cam Thomas can be inconsistent sometimes, and it can end up hurting his team, along with his lack of defense. So if he's one of those players where if he's not hitting shots, his value on the court just constantly decreases and decreases. And, like, that happens for everyone, but other players, like, are good enough to find other ways to impact the game rather than just their scoring. Mikal is the star on the team, solid on both sides of the floor, but this is the first time where he's needed to step up in the big role. Like, he was a really vital player on Phoenix when they're on their runs and when he was on that team, but now he sort of stepped into that I am the number one option role. So he definitely can do it. He's definitely, like, shown that he's possible of producing these numbers, but the problem is, again, with a lot of these Nets players, is consistency. They lack consistency. The numbers that he's getting this year aren't as good as they were from the previous year on the Nets, but then again, that might be, like, just a side effect of playing with Cam Thomas, who also gets a lot of shots up. So the real dynamic is trying to find a method to properly share the ball between those two. Earlier in the season, Nick Claxton actually made a comment after Cam Thomas chose to take an open 3 instead of passing to Nick Claxton, who was wide open under the basket for a lob. Nick Claxton got upset because he thought that Cam should have passed it. However, Cam ended up making the shot. So I don't really see how you could get upset at your teammate for making a shot. So there might be some chemistry issues going on in there, but he wasn't really shooting the ball particularly well that game either, so that might have played something to do with it, because it was like, this guy just does nothing but, Claxton's point of view was like, he does nothing but shoot, so it's like, when is he going to pass the ball? Like, when is that happening? To Claxton, like, the ball in the paint, like, under the rim, it's guaranteed. Like, why wouldn't he pass it? I guess, like, in his point of view, but he ended up making the shot, so I don't see any point to complain afterwards about it, because, like, sure, he didn't pass to you, but, like, at least he's making the shot when he's not passing to you. So, like, you're still scoring, and, like, he's still helping you win, or he's still trying to help you win. But the big question of Ben Simmons' return and their ridiculous blowout win is if he's actually a positive, and can they actually do some damage in the playoffs? No, they cannot. No, they cannot. They will not be doing better with Ben Simmons whatsoever. I cannot stand Ben Simmons' mentality. I cannot stand it whatsoever. Now, don't get me wrong. He's a great all-around player. He can do everything elite. He could shoot the ball, except shoot the ball. I said he could shoot the ball. Wow, my bad. He can't shoot the ball. That's the one thing that he can't do on a basketball court. We have someone in the chat. Crucial PG. Again with Crucial PG. Goodness. All right. Yo, my boy Jamal. Sixers fan, by the way. Okay. So I guess he's speaking for his friend. He wants Ben Simmons back on the Sixers. Tobias Harris and a second for Ben Simmons and Cam Thomas. Is that an idea? Let's see. So you can keep Ben Simmons. Like, please, just take him. Let him go back to. But why would he want him? Are you sure he's a Sixers fan? Because why would any Sixers fans want Ben Simmons back on the Sixers for after what he did to him? Honestly, but like, I mean, if he wants him, then go ahead, please. Like, just take him, please. I don't want him, but I am definitely not going to sell off Cam Thomas. No, not at all. Not when the Sixers have a competent point guard in Tyrese Maxey to team up with him. Not going to happen. There's barely much. There aren't many players on the Brooklyn Nets that can sort of create the shots, and not only that, make the ridiculous shots that he can make, and that is a very huge value. While his defense isn't a value whatsoever, it's not even a factor. It's still like the shot making is really important. Like, we need that shot making along with Mikal. He needs that second option to be able to like produce enough offensively with how these teams have been firing on the offensive side of the ball. So in order to compete, it's like you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to have a elite scoring. You have to be able to have a balance of both, and giving that to the Sixers is just ruining my chances. So no thanks. I do not want to do that. So back to the conversation, though, with Ben Simmons and his mentality. He was hyped up as being the next LeBron. Now, when you are the next LeBron, like, when you were talked about as being the next LeBron, like, that is a huge comparison. That is so ridiculous, and everyone was agreeing with it when he was a rookie. Everyone was saying that if he would have just worked on his jump shot, he becomes LeBron left-handed. Like, Kobe warned him exactly about this in an interview where Ben Simmons, like, he was asked a question on what he thinks of Ben Simmons, and his response was, well, he's got to get a jump shot. And everybody laughed, obviously, because, it's a little bit funny, but Kobe was being dead serious. You quoted, if not, he will regret it. You look at what he's doing now. Without that, it is astonishing. Now, imagine you can shoot the ball. What does that open up for you? You don't want to retire and go, man, I wish I had a jump shot. If this kid gets a jump shot, it's a serious, serious problem, end quote. So given that Kobe had such high praise for Ben Simmons and the rest of his game apart from his shooting, this is legit. Like, he legitimately could have been the best LeBron. Like, given that it's Kobe, he knows more about the game than anyone. And so far, what he said has been proven true. Since his rookie year, Ben Simmons has remained exactly the same. His free throws are terrible. His shooting is terrible. His shot selection is terrible. Anything that has to do with shooting the ball is just terrible, except for, dunking, which counts as a shot attempt, but, that's not really shooting the ball. All the praise then turned into ridicule once people started to realize how he's just doing the exact same thing over and over again, and he's not bothering to improve, and how he needed a confidence in his shot, and he needed confidence in his shot selection. His lack of scoring or like wanting to shoot the ball was a clear problem come playoff time, several times. And all the ridicule must have gotten to him to the point where he was afraid to even take shots, standing directly under the basket in several series while playing with Philly. Not to mention the game where he only scored 1 point against the Boston Celtics, or the several games where he's gotten hack-a-shacked just to get sent to the line and missed several free throws. And he's 6'10", by the way. And he's scared to go up underneath the basket sometimes. Now, as a 6'10", that is terrible that you are scared to go up under the basket. And we have another question in from Crucial PG. Who do I like as the finals matchup this season? Ooh, that is a very, very good question. I'm going to hold on to that question for like the next segment because I want to finish up on what I'm talking about with Ben Simmons. But hold that thought for just 1 minute. So obviously, like with what Ben Simmons brings to the table, like for the Nets, it's almost like he doesn't need to score to like be effective and like help the team win. especially when the offense has enough firepower along with good spacing, allowing Ben to find easy lanes to the hoop and, to create a lot of shots for other players. Similar to how Draymond plays with like Golden State, there obviously isn't anything bad with that, but remember, he was being talked about as being the next LeBron. He's not expected to give Draymond Green production. His lack of motivation or like wanting to improve is the only thing I need to know that makes me not want him to be on my team. Why would I want a player on my team who doesn't try to be more than what he is? Someone who doesn't give an effort to be good at something that could help your team. Like, he is the next LeBron, as he was told coming up his rookie year. LeBron exceeded his expectations. So I was expecting Ben Simmons to go above and beyond. Well, with LeBron and his ridiculous resume, not above and beyond, but above and beyond in his play style, because it's amazing how the hype was around him, and it's just all completely turned around because of the fact that he cannot shoot. And someone who doesn't give an effort into practicing and shooting the ball is a liability, in my opinion. And that's why I like Lonzo Ball over Ben Simmons. I would pick Lonzo Ball on my team over Ben Simmons any day of the week. Lonzo can do everything that Ben Simmons can do. He can play defense. He can dunk. He's athletic. And he can shoot now. And the funny thing about him was that he had that stipulation as a rookie that he couldn't shoot because his jump shot was just, it was so funky. So once the jump shot was broke once he hit the NBA. It was clean in college, but it was broke once it hit the NBA. But it was so bad that he went and fixed it, and he went from shooting 32% in his rookie year to averaging 37%, and then later averaging 42% on the Bulls. That is an amazing jump in efficiency. And even the worst three-point shooters can turn into sharps if they practice hard enough. It shows what a great work ethic can get you. It can get you far, and it can get you to places that you think you wouldn't be at. And that's exactly what you need in order to make it far into the playoffs. You need players that want to do more than what's expected of them. And having Ben Simmons there is just we're just going to be mediocre. We're just going to be there. Like how we've been most of the years. It's I don't want that. And not only that, the matchups for him, Jesus Christ, if they put him on the floor with Claxton at the same time, I'm going to absolutely lose it, because he had this problem with Embiid where he would just sit under the paint and Embiid would work the low post, ruining all of the spacing. It was terrible. And I thought it would work. At the beginning, I actually wanted Ben Simmons because we had Kevin Durant, Kyrie. But now that we don't have him, I don't want him. It's you need to surround him with pieces that are able to produce enough in order for him to remain effective. Similar with how people think Draymond works, because Draymond needs Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson, quote unquote, in order to perform and do the things that he does, set his screens, pass the ball, play defense, and all that things. But the difference is, I feel there's a lot more value with Draymond Green, because he's not scared to shoot the ball if he's got to. He just chooses not to. There's a difference. He's not scared of it, I don't think. I mean, maybe that's all just for show. We have no idea. So, and what's worse is that I don't think we can trade for, we can get rid of Ben Simmons, because everyone knows he can't shoot. I don't know what trades are even available for him, or if anyone even wants him, let alone everyone knows his weaknesses in the postseason. Everyone knows how to stop it at this point. Especially after this recent injury, I don't think anyone would want to pick up someone who's only played 6 games. And with that, we are well over the time. Goodness me, I ranted a lot. That's how you know I'm a Nets fan. So I'm going to be back after a short break yet again. In the next segment, we are going to talk about the Lakers, your favorite topic. And we will, I'd acknowledge the comments that I saw earlier, but I will be right back after this short break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Before I begin with the segment, as I do with every single one of my first and second segments, I'd like to remind you guys to always please remember to tip and to donate. Really makes the show much more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. That is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. If you enjoyed this episode, remember to follow and to subscribe to the show. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any app that carries a podcast. Please remember to subscribe, give us nice reviews. That way, you could see your friends be on the GSMC podcast and let them know. So, without further ado, let us begin with the next segment. As I go ahead and pull it up, just give me 1 second. There we go. Actually, hold on. Before I start off with this segment, we have a couple of comments that I'd like to get acknowledged. So let me go ahead and just pull that up real quick. And all right, so let's see. The first comment, again, Crucial PG, he's asked, who do I think is going to be in the finals this season? So, like, who do I like as the finals matchup? So that's a little bit tricky because it's I don't want to decide yet until, like, the post All-Star break, like, where I see, like, where every team is, like, after that break. But as of right now, I have Denver going all the way to the finals again and matching up against the Milwaukee Bucks. And the reason for that is because, like, I would say the Clippers, but I just cannot say the Clippers when they have James Harden and their reputation. I cannot. I can't. I would have said Oklahoma, but after their recent struggles with all of those games, I don't think they could make it far either. So if I were to choose a team, I would rather choose, like, the team that has already proven that they could win and can go far than most of those other teams, because, like, it's just a tendency that all of them have had, and it's like it's something that I just cannot ignore. Like, for example, Boston, if I were to pick Boston also has a reputation of not being able to perform when the lights shine the brightest. So I don't necessarily want to pick them because it's like they could do that again. Same thing applies with Philly. And the same thing also applies with, unfortunately, like, in my opinion, I believe, like, the Knicks are a team that's just going to end up losing in the end, because it's just how it is. And it's like it's not something that can necessarily be explained. It's just something that it is. It's the same way with how, like, people say that Doc Rivers is a bad coach simply because of his, like, adjustments and the fact that he's blown all of these playoff series leads. So it's like it just is, and I can't get over that superstition until I see some differences coming, like, close into the postseason. And now we have yes, I think Bucks over Celtics. Yes, I think like, right now they're not playing well, and they're second seed. So they're not playing well, and they're the second seed by a wide margin in the Eastern Conference. So after All-Star break, like, imagine when they figure it out. Like, I think they could cause a serious problem. And Giannis in the postseason, he absolutely scares me. Like, he scares me. I'm terrified of that man. I saw that man destroy my Brooklyn Nets. Please, no thank you. And he also has another question that I'll acknowledge in the next segment, because I actually have to talk about this segment about Darvin Ham being on the hot seat. But these are good questions, so I don't mind you asking them. So please keep going ahead. The Lakers lost in a blowout to Houston yet again, 135-119. like I've said many times before, LeBron and Anthony Davis and D'Angelo Russell, they look like the only players on the Lakers that came to play. D'Angelo Russell, ever since that trade rumor, he's really turned it around, and he's showed that he does not want to be traded. It's insane, like how he flipped that switch. It's insane. So why didn't he have it on the whole time? No one knows. As usual, the rest of the Lakers and the bench and the rotations, were mostly terrible, except for Roy Hachimura, who got only 22 minutes that night and ended with 16, 5 on 4 of 5. Why isn't he getting more minutes? Why is Christian Wood ever in the game? Why is Prince ever in the game when you have someone like Roy Hachimura who can take some of those minutes? Like, Darvin Ham loads those guys, Torrance Prince, with like 30 minutes a game. You can spare some of those minutes to Roy. And Prince he's had a lot of games that I've watched him where I don't see him really do anything that like impacts the team in a big way. Reeves hasn't been good recently either. He's been a little bit inefficient. This team needs a trade, and they need to do it quickly. LeBron was on the bench, and he looked sick at the rest of the bench. He looked disgusted. Jalen Green ended with 34. Sengun ended with 31. Sengun has been a really good rookie this season. It's unfortunate that Victor had to be in the same draft as him. He's great to watch. But more on the Lakers. The substitutions, they're so bad. It's not even funny. Like, the lineup clearly doesn't work, but Darvin Ham continues to do the exact same thing over and over and over again and just praying that LeBron drops 30 points. In this game, a lot more players came off the bench because it was a blowout. So it's like, he just uses his bench when there's a blowout game. It's like, why? Because the last few games, there's only been 4 players coming off the bench. What kind of substitutions are those? Roy wouldn't normally get to play in the game, of course. Like, he didn't log in any minutes in that last game. And the fact that Vanderbilt and Prince play significantly more than him and can barely produce more than him, why not start Roy? And I know that all these talks about the Lakers are like, end up being about their bench and their coach, but is there really anyone else to blame? Who are you going to blame? LeBron? I mean, you can't blame LeBron. LeBron ended with 25, 12, and 4. AD ended with 22 and 11, and D'Lo ended with 29. It wasn't his fault that they lost. What, you expect a 39-year-old LeBron to go all Miami and drop 40, 12, and 10 or something like that? Some ridiculous stat line? No. He's old. Like, that shouldn't really... he's great, but it shouldn't really be expected of him with this age to do it consistently. He needs that help, and, like, he's always needed that help to be able to, and he's just never gotten there. He's never gotten that help. And I grow tired of this talk because it's becoming more and more apparent that there needs to be a change in the Lakers, and it's just they aren't doing anything. Why? If LeBron wasn't on the team, like if any other good caliber player was on that team, I don't think they'd be in a much better position. And the only player that I could see probably taking this team and doing a little bit better is Luka. But that's literally only because his offense reminds me a lot of LeBron and he's younger. But even so, Darvin Ham as the coach would probably just ruin him too. There was a clip on Twitter of LeBron giving Darvin Ham the most ridiculous side-eye. It could rival his stare at Boston Celtics in Game 6. Darvin Ham was also on the sideline just not coaching his players. There was a clip where he was just standing there. And Ime Udoka, the other coach, was doing all these hand gestures, telling him you need to go there, and all those adjustments that you'd expect a coach to make. But Darvin Ham was just standing there. Another clip of Anthony Davis in the huddle after Ham tried to draw up a play. Ham was just watching, and once he gets into the huddle and starts drawing up the play, Anthony Davis just gets up and he leaves. Now, clearly the rest of the team is not behind him, and they need to find a new coach and get a good trade out of that. Clearly there needs to be change, and it has to happen now. And it's difficult finding a coach for LeBron. And not many have been notable to the point where it's a meme that LeBron literally coaches himself and he coaches the team. And honestly, I've been undermining the whole get a coach because I've always seen LeBron do everything and tell everyone what to do on the team all the time. So it's a bit concerning, just how bad he's been and how many people want to see him fired. And the Lakers, honestly, they missed out on Doc. I mean, I don't personally think Doc would have been a better head coach. Well, no, actually, I can't even say that. I think Doc would have been a better head coach, but I don't think in the long run he would have been a better head coach because of his tendencies in the playoffs. But any head coach at this point seems to be better than Darvin Ham with his substitutions. It's really bad, even though Doc doesn't really have that good substitutions either. But who knows? A coach that you like and that is like you're behind in the locker room is definitely like much better than a coach that like you cannot stand. So getting rid of him would be a I'm assuming it would be a blessing given how they looked and how they treat him. Not to mention like Doc knew all about LeBron's game, needing to constantly like coach against him and a lot of matchups for so long. So I think he'd make the right plays for LeBron and he'd be able to do them, even though LeBron does all his plays himself. And of course, playoffs, Doc, like I mentioned before, he doesn't do anything. But will Ham do anything? I don't really think so. So it's really hard to blame anyone. It's really hard to blame anyone on the team or like other than like the bench that or the coach that substitutes the bench in. Like the Lakers have a tendency to scapegoat a lot of their players, and I'm not trying to scapegoat anyone or Darvin Ham, but from what he's shown, there's not really much evidence that like that can defend him. Like, dude, it's like no, it doesn't work like that. Sugun was drafted 3 years ago. Wow, I missed that. Oh my God, I'm terrible. I need to go back to the record books. Good Lord, Jesus. But anyways, regardless, the Lakers and scapegoating. They did this last year with Westbrook, even though like it was a long time coming, in my opinion. His struggles weren't fully recognized by mainstream media. Once it became much more mainstream, a lot of people just saw how negatively Russ could affect the team, and he was just coming off Greater Light, like in LA, and being in a low market team, it's very difficult to get that recognition when you do bad. But when you do good, you get a lot of that recognition. Obviously, on the Clippers, he doesn't face as much scrutiny because the team with like fewer clicks isn't going to get acknowledged as much, unless it was like that one little segment where they lost 6 straight games. It's like with Kemba Walker, like when he was on the Hornets. It's a low market media and not much coverage in those games, and people started to underrate Kemba. However, they started to only do that. He started to become overrated because people started to call him underrated. They would acknowledge his great games and like his good games, but they wouldn't acknowledge any of his bad games. And I feel like when you do that, like it should go both ways. You shouldn't just acknowledge a player for being like you shouldn't say he's underrated simply because you see a couple of his good games. You need to acknowledge all of the games and how the media treats all of those games, because he's not getting coverage for when he's playing bad. And neither are some of these other players that are on low market teams, like Bradley Beal when he was on Washington, CJ when he was on Portland. CJ arguably has been the biggest all-star snub for the longest time on Portland because he doesn't get nearly the much media attention that Dame got. But you only hear about those good games. Now, we have a lot of comments, so let's go see. Jesus Christ, there's so many PG members. Good Lord. So another question from Crucial PG was, do I think that Ben Simmons would have been good with the current Sixers and Nick Nurse's rotations? Honestly, I like Nick Nurse's rotations. He uses his bench. He uses a lot of his players that come off his bench. So I really like his rotations. Do I think it would have worked? No, I do not think it would have worked simply because he's Ben Simmons. Like, I'm not a big fan of him. I don't think he doesn't have a scoring mentality, so I don't think he'd want to step up to that role and be that big player and be that leading scorer or even like be that catalyst on the bench. I don't see the motivation behind him, and I don't see that driving force. I don't think that would work out. Simply, it's literally only because of his mentality. If his mentality was different, like if he actually wanted to get better and if he wanted to improve, then yes, I could totally see him working with all of those rotations. And with that, we are out of time for this second segment. Went on a little tangent. So join me for the third segment where I go ahead and recap some of the games that happened from last night. And I will see you after this short break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, and we are going to talk about the games that have recently happened from last night. As always, I'd like to remind you guys to please remember to tip and to donate. Really makes the show much more interactive between myself, the host, you guys, the viewers. The link will be displayed below in the ticker. That is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. And without further ado, let us go right ahead and begin with our third segment where we talk about the matchups that happened from last night. So I was talking about the Clippers and Russell Westbrook, so I might as well continue and talk about how they lost to the Cleveland Cavaliers without Darius Garland. The Cavs, they're a very solid team, even without their second player. So imagine how much better that team is going to be when they get him. And when they get him back from his injury. Harden and Paul George didn't show up in this game. Westbrook did, though, with 5 of 8 and 13 points. It was Kawhi against the whole Cavs out there. He was their leading scorer. Let me just pull up the box scores real quick. He had 30 that night. So, yeah, it was just him against the entire Cavs roster at that point. And the Cavs roster, everyone on the starting lineup was in double figures. Mitchell ended with 28 and 12. Jarrett Allen ended with 20 and 17. Okoro ended with 17, and Strus ended with 14. So I was talking about before in a different podcast where I thought that the Clippers would have great matchups on the defensive end. Now I'm not so sure because almost the entire starting lineup was in double figures in this game. So maybe the defense isn't as good or as hyped up as I thought it was going to be. And with this win under their belt, along with the win against the Bucks for the Cavs, I think the Cavs could potentially make some noise in the playoffs, especially if they can get Garland back just before then. I feel like they could make the series competitive against the top team. Do I think that they will end up beating that team? Honestly, they could potentially upset now that I think about it, because Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland both being on that roster, both being good scoring options, and Dame being not that good of a defender. And this is one of the many reasons why Portland hasn't gone far in the playoffs outside of 2019 with Damian Lillard, his terrible defense. So Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland could probably outproduce him on that offensive side of the ball, along with Giannis, but it will be difficult. I'm not going to say it will be easy. And Jarrett Allen is a really competent rim protector, so maybe he could hold off and have a good matchup against Giannis. I don't think it will. It probably won't happen, but who knows? But I don't know. Did my computer just freeze? Jesus Christ, my computer froze for 2 seconds. Apologies for that. So again, with this win under the belt, if they get Garland back, I feel like they could really make a bunch of noise. Clippers need to be worried about this loss, however, because they were just put in tier 1. And obviously, with this loss to the Cavs, they aren't going to be tier 1 in power rankings anymore. As they should definitely be worried about losing to this team. I didn't expect them to lose to the Cavs, especially after beating Boston at home in a huge blowout win. I'm sure they're not getting the 1 anymore, and Boston is probably going to go and move up back to number 1 in power rankings, as they won their last game 118-112 against the Pelicans, which are another good playoff team. Tatum ended with 28, Brown ended with 22, Drew ended with 20, and the entire starting lineup was in double figures. Very dominant win for the starting lineup. The Pelicans, even with this loss, I think they look pretty well. Ingram and Zion, they've been doing their job rather well, scoring. They scored 28, they scored 26 in this game, but CJ CJ needs to get a few more shots up. And he didn't play bad, but shooting 50% from the field, but only getting 16 points. Like, I know he can contribute more to that team and could help them win. So I don't think this is the year for the Pelicans, but I think maybe next year could be their year. They could go on that. They can go on that little run and make it and stay in the first seed, like how the Minnesota Timberwolves are doing and how like Oklahoma City did. I feel like next year that's going to be that team. Like, they're going to be in that situation. So, and I personally, I desperately want Zion to succeed in this league. He's a great talent, one of the best finishers around the rim that I've ever seen, right next to LeBron. He's so dominant, and he's good enough, and he has a good supporting cast to help him out. He has a shot. They just need to figure it out, and they need to allow him to play a lot more games. He's been playing all of the games this season, don't get me wrong, but obviously, before that, with his eating habits, Stephen A. Smith saying that he would literally, he'd eat a table is like, that's a wild statement to me, but, that's just what he says. That's Stephen A. Smith. But they just need to figure it out. And once they figure it out, I think that they can make a really big run in the regular season and possibly be a problem in the playoffs. I don't think I have to dwindle much on the Celtics since, they still are like the number one team in the East, and they are the number one team to beat. They are the team to beat in that Eastern Conference. Crafty BG, what up? The Thunder, I was just talking about them. They did not play well at all. They lost to Minnesota, which isn't a bad team, but obviously, losing to the 1 seed or the same team that's tied with you in the record is not necessarily a good look. In this instance, however, the Thunder as a team, they did not play well. As a team, as a whole team, they were bad. And they failed to show up when the lights shine the brightest against a good team, which is a concern that I mentioned previously in the previous podcast where I wasn't sure if they'd be able to meet the pressure going up against good teams if they're losing to bad teams, and here we are. Chet was terrible this game, going 2 of 9 and only getting 4 points, so much for his efficiency in Rookie of the Year. Shai ended with 37 again, and Jalen Williams ended with 20 again, and again, nobody else on the team showed up to play, which seems to be a common theme for OKC in their losses. Shai has a great game, and Williams has a great game, but then the rest of the team just doesn't show up. And the Wolves, on the other hand, had the entire starting lineup in double figures. Ant had 27, Cat had 21 and 10, Rudy had 12 and 18, McDaniels had 14, and Alexander Walker had 12. A very dominant game for the starting lineup. So now the Wolves hold that number 1 seed in the West, and this will really tank in the power rankings for Oklahoma. I'm starting to worry that OKC is going to go on a one-and-done season, similar to how the Memphis Grizzlies did in the previous season when they were going against the Lakers, how they were the favorites in that series, being the 2 seed, but they ended up losing to LeBron. Relatively easy fashion. I'm starting to worry that that's going to be what OKC's trajectory is, depending on the matchups going in, because if they get matched up against, being the 2nd seed, if they get matched up against the Suns, that could go either way, in my opinion. I have no idea who could win that series. But Denver played Milwaukee, and Giannis didn't sit out this game, as he ended with 29 and 12. Take notes, Joel. But it wasn't enough against Denver, where Jokic scored 25, 12, and 16, and Jamal scored 35. I knew this would end up being a problem for the Bucks, which is Dame's lack of defense, and his lack of offense is definitely going to hurt this team if he doesn't perform the way that he's expected to. Jamal ended with 35. If Dame can't match Jamal in points, then he's useless on the court because he's not that good of a defender. And I said it before that this was one of the many reasons why Portland never made it far in the postseason. The Nuggets still look like the defending champs. While the rankings might not show it, I think they are truly the team to beat. Obviously, since being they won the ring last year, so obviously they're the team to beat. But this win puts them in the second tied with the Wolves. And in another matchup, we have Phoenix against Miami. Phoenix ended up winning 118 to 105. I didn't really expect much scoring from either side, primarily because Miami's offense is a little bit of a wild card, but their defense is great. Meanwhile, the Suns are like the exact opposite, where their offense is great and their defense is like a little bit of a wild card. I say this because in that matchup against the teams the Kings, when they went on a 22-0 run or something like that, they were able to do that because of their defense. So it's like, but again, the defenders on the team and the players on the team, they aren't necessarily known as like competent defenders. Most of them, at least the main ones. So it's a little bit of a wild card, but I figured the two would end up canceling each other out, and they somewhat did. The big three produced. Booker had 22, KD had 20, and Bradley Beal had 19, but the leading scorer for them was Eric Gordon. Their elite offense kicked in by being able to have another scorer that comes off the bench show up while the other starters were being inefficient. Devin Booker was 9 of 23 from the field, and Beal went 8 for 21 from the field. Jimmy ended with 26, Terry Rozier ended with 21, and Tyler Hero ended with 17. Bam did not come to ball in this game, scoring only 8 points. If he produced a bit more, then this game would have been a lot closer, and it probably would have gone into overtime. Like I said, their offense was a wild card, and here's a perfect example of it. Terry Rozier has been a pretty good addition for the Miami Heat, so the trade looks like it's working. He's averaging the most points on Miami. I know he's only been traded there like a few games ago, but still, they're on a 7-game losing streak. Obviously, that's really bad news if you are the Heat, but the fact that Terry Rozier is actually working for you is the only good news that I could really give them at this point, because 7-game losing streak it's not ideal. It's really bad news if you are the Heat, not in terms of like seeding, but like in terms of like the teams that they've lost. Like they've lost to legitimate playoff teams and some teams that they might match up against in those playoffs. Like they might be able to make that run. They might not be able to make that run in the playoffs that we usually expect them to if they face off against the Knicks, or if the Suns give them this much trouble. Like if the Suns give them this much trouble and the Knicks give them this much trouble, then just imagine what they do like when Giannis comes up on the court. Like I'm sorry, but Giannis just scares me in the playoffs. I have no idea, like, because he always shows up in those games. So I am terrified for anyone that has to match up against him. It's not going to be a good night for anyone. It's not going to be a good night. Believe me, I would know. It's Vietnam flashbacks all over again. It's terrible. Okay, I'm gonna need a short break after that, and we will go ahead and break into the fourth segment where we talk about the players of the week. So I will go ahead and be right back. And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast. And with the week being over from last week, we obviously get the players of the week coming in recently. And those two players for your Eastern Conference are going to be For the Eastern Conference, it's Giannis. And for the Western Conference, it's Devin Booker. So Giannis ended the week averaging 29, 14, and 8. Some really dominant numbers. It's like LeBron numbers if they were juiced up. And Booker averaged 42 and 5 on 63% from the field. Obviously, both players were phenomenal that week and have so much talent. Devin Booker last week dropped 44 points in a loss to the Magic, and 2 days before that, he dropped 62 and also lost. And I don't understand how that happens to Devin. It's ridiculous. Like he has these great scoring games, and his team just ends up losing it in the end, and just to make his effort worth nothing. He infamously did this when he dropped 70 points in a blowout against the Boston Celtics, and that trend sort of has followed him into the finals even, where he scored 40 points twice and ended up losing in both of those games. Like you can't help but feel bad for him. And it's like those numbers, like that he's shooting 63% from the field on 42 points is literally my career in 2K. Like those numbers shouldn't be attainable. Like I know it's for a week, but still that is insanely impressive. That it's just that was just a week. Like that is 2K. That is actually 2K virtually simulated basketball stats. That's exactly what that was. Like, and you can't help but feel bad for him because he's putting up these amazing scoring games and just the team just loses. And I guess the rest of the voters felt sorry for him too, because he ended up winning this award, and I don't even think he should have won it. Like he's on a scoring tear, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he was the best player of the week. I don't. I think it was Luka. Luka should have been player of the week for the Western Conference. I don't really need to elaborate more than just off of the fact that he scored 73 points in a win, but I will anyway. Like that alone, that alone should lock him in for player of the week. But Booker was going off, so like I'm not gonna sit here and say that like what Booker did wasn't impressive whatsoever. But it's just what Luka did, like, and what he did throughout the rest of the week was just as impressive, if not even more impressive. And I think the reason like why it was given to him and like why Devin Booker got that slight edge was because the Suns and the Mavs matched up in that same week, and Devin Booker ended up dropping 44 points and winning in this time. So I think that they sort of took that win they took that win with a grain of salt and sort of gave it to Booker, because it's like, oh, if we give Luka player of the week, we're kind of saying it's kind of counterintuitive because Devin Booker kind of beat Luka in that week. So I think that's why they might have given him that slight edge in the voting. But the one thing that the Mavs were missing in that specific game was Kyrie. So that extra scoring option that Luka was supposed to have wasn't there, and that didn't give him any help that he needed to overcome Devin Booker's 40 points. And not to mention Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal. So Luka might have ended the week with more L's than Devin Booker, but again, like he played more games, so that makes sense. I understand wins are important when determining like just how good a player is, because it's like you have to win. That's part of the sport. If you don't win the game, then it's like, what's the point? A win is a win. Like you need that. But Jesus, like Luka became the person to score the most points since 2006. The only player in NBA history to average a 50-point triple-double over the span of 2 games, and he couldn't even win this award. Like, I understand that the Devin Booker shooting was absolutely ridiculous, but averaging a 50-point triple-double is just as much of a my-career stat as Devin Booker's stat. It's literally like, it's just my career, and you're just going into a game, and you're just stat padding and trying to badge grind or stuff like that. Like, it was ridiculous how well they were scoring. Like, at that point, it's not even, like, his fault that his team loses. So, like, why punish good players from things outside of their control? It's a bit weird, in my opinion. And what makes it worse is that, like, I'm confident the win over the Mavs was, like, the difference maker in deciding, like, between who would win the award. Because both of these stats are from video games. Like, both of them are unreal. But Devin Booker was the one that ended up winning the game against Luka Doncic in the end, and I feel like that sort of gave him that edge. Not fair, but again, what can you do? Maybe they could do a thing where they introduce 2 players like of the week, and they like make it so that like they share the award. Like I remember how the NFL like they split the award, the MVP award between Peyton Manning and some running back that I do not know, and I don't want to get wrong. And I know the NBA All-Star Trophy was split between players before. So why not make this Players of the Week split up too? Like, if there's, at least when there's, like, multiple players that are, like, you can't choose between the two. Like, they were that good that, like, it's difficult to choose between those two. I think it would bring a lot more attention to some of these players and their game. Like, they play great, but when you have someone who puts up numbers like these, it's almost unfair. And it's like, when you have two players that put up numbers like this, it's like, I feel like that should be acknowledged, because it's almost as if, I don't want to say it's almost as if you're, like, disrespecting Luka by not giving him that award and his accomplishments and stuff like that. Well, not really an award, but, like, an accolade, I guess you could say. But at the same time, like, it's just part of the game. I feel like that should just be included. Like, they should both be included, because they both played well, and they both played ridiculously well. Like, it was really difficult to choose between the two. But in my personal opinion, if it was just down to one, like, I would have it down to two people, like, max, but I personally think that Luka got snubbed. Maybe because of that, it was because of that 73-point game that happened towards the end of the week, and that didn't get that much recognition towards the week and, like, you know, during the week. But, like, remember, it's still the same week that Embiid scored 70 points and that was the most points by an individual at the time of the season. And now Luka topped that. Like, I feel like that would break a lot. That should have been the straw that broke the camel's back, because we already saw a 70-point game, and now Luka gave us an even better one. It's like, that is absolutely insane. And we had this exact same story last year, where Donovan Mitchell ended up dropping 70 points this one night, and then later after, Damian Lillard does the exact same thing. And that was the first time that's ever happened before, where two players scored 70 or more on two separate occasions. Well, no, not on two separate occasions. When two players score 70 or more on separate occasions, like when they do it respectively. Now it happens again on back-to-back seasons in the exact same week. Like, what are the chances of this sort of thing happening? And why is that? Is it the defense, or is it the talent of the offense that's just being better? And I think it might be like a mix of both. The big difficulty, like, with defense now is the rotations. Back in the 90s, they had to play man. Obviously, everyone would know that. And that meant the players were just following whatever their man was doing, trying to stay in front of him and trying to prevent him from getting a basket. Without the spacing was back then, whenever someone drove to the paint, there would be at least, like, 2 or 3 players around him because of how close they were to each other and how much those teams shrank the floor and how they'd eat up the shot clock. Now, since they were close, there was nothing wrong with the player going over to try and get the block, since, like, you know, they were so close in the paint, bottled up with each other, and get the block on whoever's driving, because there's not much space to really do anything where there is a need for rotations. Now, and not only that, but you also, in the 90s, you couldn't necessarily play help unless, you couldn't hedge unless it was, like, you were guaranteed, like, you're going to double team, like, without a doubt going to double team. But after a while, they got rid of those rules, and now in the league, like, they allow you to play any type of defense that you want. And this allows, like, a lot more strategies for the game, and, like, and a lot more tactics on how to win these games in the end, because it's like, what if the team breaks out into zone? What do you do? What if the team decides to press you? What do you do? And it's like, it opens up a lot more, like, possibilities that not only the defense can do, but, like, the offense has to do in order to counter that defense. So obviously right now, like, in order to deal with zone and with hedging and with a lot of players dropping and going to help, the offense has spaced the floor out completely, to the point where it's either a layup or a three-pointer. Like, it's one of the two. The mid-range is abolished. Almost abolished, actually, because there's some players that really like to use it and are really effective at using it, might I add. It's more ISO-heavy now, but using screens and other methods to score is obviously viable, just not as popular. And, like, I mean, it makes a lot of sense, because why wouldn't you put the ball in the hands of your best player? And a lot of people are thinking that this somewhat makes the defense easier, because, back then it was you and your man. You couldn't get any type of help. And now, like, you can play all the types of help defense, but I don't necessarily think that's entirely true. Now with the spacing in mind, players have to think differently on the defensive end. Like, they have to use their brain differently, and they have to outthink the other player differently. Back then, they could just think like, oh, I'm going to stay right in front of my man, and he is not going anywhere. Like, just make sure that he doesn't go anywhere. But now, with the defense and the spacing, the defender has to think, do I play high on the screen? Do I play low on the screen? Do I switch on the screen, or do we stay? What happens when we do switch? Who is going to drop down from the corner to play the help? And who from the hash is going to rotate over to the corner? And who is going to be left open? Who rotates over when that first pass to the open man is made? In a P&R, when the roller drops, do I drop down to the guard, or do I drop down to guard the weak side if I'm in the corner? Or do I stay in the corner and let the guy that drops down on the P&R go up for the lob? Do I bait him and run over to the guy in the corner? Or if the guy drops from the corner, do I go over to the guy on the hash? Does the guy on the hash run over to the corner, or does he stay on the guy on the hash? There's a lot more nuances on the defense that a lot of players have to think about and have to decide on what shot the other team gets to shoot. Do I let him take the inefficient mid-range? Do I play high on the screen and let the lob pass possible? Do I double? In what situations do I double? When he walks up to half court, when he's in this corner? Like, there's so many like different defensive possibilities now that like you have to remember, more so than just, I got to stay in front of my man. And there's a lot more to manage on the court because it's a lot more team-oriented now because of this spacing. And like, because a lot of rotations happen so quickly, it's easy to like for the team to not be able to keep up at all. And it's not easy to be able to put all your energy on offense while at the same time putting all your energy on defense. Especially now with the ISO-heavy lineups that we run in this league. So like, when the player is doing everything on offense with the isolations, obviously they're going to be out of breath on the defense. Do that over and over and over and over again, combined with the walking up and down the court. That's a lot of cardio. And all that running at 100%, it's not easy on every single play. So I feel like all of that plays into the lack of defense in this league and the explosive offense that we've been seeing. Like, it's why we see LeBron not give much effort on the defensive plays, because he saves his energy for the offensive possession. And to his credit, why wouldn't he? Because like, and to all the other basketball players, why wouldn't they? The talent in that league, with how it is now, it's almost stupid to not give the ball to your best player and force them into like these isolation scenarios, and for them to just relax a little bit on defense, thus giving them a time to breathe. It's something that's like sounds pretty obvious, but still, even with this, like, you can't win it all with just one player. But usually, like, there tends to be a lot more action. No team wants to give a player an open layup, so they'd rather the possibility of a 3, since the likelihood of a player missing that is significantly higher than the likelihood of a player missing a layup, which is why there's a lot of drops. And the problem with dropping is that you leave someone wide open. And then the hash is going to have to run over to guard the guy in the corner, and then the pass is made to the guy in the hash, who's also open. Like, the rotation has to be fluent, and it has to be, like, in sync with your team. And if your team is not on the same page, it's very difficult to follow, and it's not easy. It's not something that's relatively easy to do. And it becomes an even bigger problem when you have to decide which of the shooters to leave open, and when you end up picking the wrong one. So you have to be aware of, like, which shooter you are on, and you have to know which shooter is the biggest threat and in which areas he is the biggest threat. Because if you, let's say, let's go through a hype. Let's say you have PJ Tucker in the corner, right? And you are a hash player who is guarding, let me think, Trae Young out there on the perimeter. Now, Trae Young right now is not in the play. He's spacing. He's creating space for his team in a spot up scenario, and the corner has to drop because the pick and roll happened, and now the pass was made to the corner to PJ Tucker. Obviously, you're stuck in a very difficult position. Who do I leave open? Do I leave PJ Tucker, who is historically known for shooting that corner shot, and go guard him? Or do I leave Trae Young, who is inefficient not really inefficient, but he takes a lot of bad shots from out there and tends to be inefficient from that range at the three-point line. So who do you leave open, and who do you fear more to hit the shot? And that's something that you have to think about in a split second, because by the time the defender drops, the pass is most likely already going to be made. Now, if you're a good defender, you could potentially jump that lane and remove that pass from ever happening in the first place. But then again, as always, that is risky, because he might just make whoever's the pick and roller, whoever's the point guard in the pick and roller, might just make the play to throw it to the hash instead of hitting the corner. So that's always a risk, but then again, it's a risk that you have to make in that very instance. So it's not something that's easy to do. And I don't think that anyone on the East was snubbed for Giannis. He was clear-cut the best player in the conference. Maybe if Joel Embiid did not sit out against the Nuggets, maybe he would have won this award over him. He had a very strong week, obviously, with the opening of his 70-point game. But after him sitting out against Denver, I think that's sort of what made him lose that award, because after the talk was, oh my God, Embiid had 70-plus points, then the talk shifted to Embiid is scared, Embiid is soft, he doesn't want to play Jokic at his home court. So that definitely killed him. And scoring 70 points in the week, that was being the first week, that would wave headlines throughout if he didn't sit out against the Nuggets, in my personal opinion. So I don't think Giannis got snubbed. I don't think Joel Embiid got snubbed, and I think Giannis deserved that award clear cut. So with that, we are out of time, and that is the end of our podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching. I'm your host, Nelson, and as always, please remember to tip and donate. Follow the link that is below in the ticker. Once again, that is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Once again, take care.